What's coming up now? Let's go straight to Ayanda and find out who her panelists are to discuss this racial issue in South Africa. Ayanda.
Thank you so much, Leanne. Good morning to you. Well, as you've alluded to a little bit earlier, 20 years into our democracy, South Africa is still dealing with racial intolerance. I mean, one would have thought that by now we'd be holding hands and singing Kumbaya. Well, whether it be in the boardroom, in the classroom, on the streets, or even in the sports change rooms, racism has been making headlines of late. And we've dedicated today's show to debating this issue with the hopes of finding solutions and a way forward. Our panelists for this segment are Institute of Race Relations Head of Research, Lerato Moloi. I'm joined also by Education MEC in the Gauteng province, Banyaza Sufi, as well as AfroForum's legal spokesperson, attorney Vili Spies. Gentlemen, a very good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning. Good morning.
Lerato, let me perhaps begin with you. Were we naive as a country to think that Madiba's ideal rainbow nation, and that after TRC everything would be fine and dandy, and that we'd all just adopt one culture as South Africans going forward?
First, I'd like to say thank you so much for having us here. This idea of the rainbow nation that we adopted after the new democratic dispensation, I wouldn't call it naive, but we put too much of our hopes in the idea of racial integration, and in a very short space of time. So, to be quite honest, we are a very young democracy. It's only been 20 years, and just because a certain cohort of the population achieved rights such as being able to vote and being able to participate in the economy, it doesn't mean that all the damage that was done in many decades before that has been done away with. So we still need a lot more time to deal with things such as economic inequality, integrating societies, because of course you can't integrate with other people if you live in your own society, blocked off from meeting people of different cultures and races. So I just think we need a bit more time to address many issues, and I think the biggest concern at the moment is economic inequality, because when people are living so far apart in essentially two different worlds, it's difficult to integrate, whether it's on a race level or cultural level.
Is the media blowing things out of proportion? How severe is the situation at the moment?
It is quite severe. Like you mentioned, we read new media reports of racism every day. I do think that we'd obviously highlight the bad things that do happen. So when there are instances of racial integration, of course, there won't be a media headline saying that South Africa is doing really well on that front. But I do think it's a good thing that these things are being reported, because it shows South Africa's intolerance towards racism. So if these things weren't being reported and there wasn't an outrage and an outcry about it, it would show that we're actually going backwards as a country. But the fact that when we read an incident such as the one that happened at the agricultural school in the Northwest, I think it was, we're outraged about it, showing that we actually want to take steps to improving race relations in the country.
Well, let's talk about some of those incidents that have been making headlines. Clearly, racism is not exempt from affecting those in school. The incident in Roodepoort, where one school, there was a protest there because the coloured parents did not want a black principal there, or black people in management. Was this a fair request that they requested representation in managerial structures of that school?
Surely not. I'm of the view that the choice of non-racialism was a correct choice, and we've made progress, and we need to defend it. And therefore, we must not be discouraged if other people believe that they need to be represented in structures of governance, either at leadership level or any other level. So the choice of our former leaders to say this country will be non-racial, democratic, and non-sexist South Africa, that choice was correct. And that's a choice that we need to defend with whatever that we have. And I really believe that if some sections of society believes that they are undermined, they are not recognized, give them a hearing. Because we are in the building process. This is a country that is in transition. So we must not rush that transition or undermine the concerns of other people. Accommodate the concerns, reasonable concerns of fellow South Africans, give them the guidance, make them feel that indeed non-racialism is the future. And it is the future. And that's why I feel that within the schooling environment and any other environment under our leadership here, we have to ensure that we nip it in the bud. If we sense that there are people that believe racism is the only way out, we must make it aware, we must make them aware that it can't be and it should not be. It must not hide, because sometimes racists believe that you don't see them. They believe that they've got the legitimate right to determine where this country can go. all of us have a legitimate right to say we are taking this country to a non-racial society that all of us can be proud of.
Some might say that they're not being racist, but they're just seeking to protect the purity of their racial group, of their language, of their culture. In Kuro, that was a situation there where white parents saying we don't want our children to assimilate or to integrate lest they come back with foreign cultures and foreign dialect, etc. But you see a situation where even black parents, when they see an influx of black children or black learners in a particular school, they will take their children out of there because it will then be seen as an inferior Model C school.
But we need to differentiate the quest for quality education and racism. I really believe that if we can get our education system to bear the power that all of us can be proud, I don't think some of the issues will witness them. So that quality education must not be there and there. It must be all over within the education system so that everyone can be proud that their children are indeed getting quality education. But those that believe that their cultural rights should be protected, they're within their own rights. As long as they don't use those cultural rights to sugarcoat other wrong things, especially racism. So if people believe that, no, my child must learn in Afrikaans or my child must learn in Zulu or Xhosa, that parent has that right.
I seem to have a problem with the sound there, unfortunately. Well, I think you're getting an idea of what the discussion is about this morning and how it's going to be unfolding here, talking about racism in South Africa and the issues thereof. Have we moved on in the country? Some of the questions and points being raised. Were our expectations too much? Did we want too much as a country? Or is it just a matter of, we've still got a way to go. We have come forward a long way, but we really need a lot more patience. I mean, you look at a country like the United States of America. It's 50 years down the line, and there are still issues. But you have to move forward as a country. But it still takes time. Anyway, these are the discussions. We want you to get involved. Please write to us at Morning Live SABC if you'd like to send us a comment, a tweet, or a post. At the same time, let me update you what's happening on the of racially segregating our next speaker in the panel. Let's go straight to him now. Vili Spies, he's the legal spokesperson for AfriForum. Vili, just before the break, we heard the Education MEC, Panyaza Lesufi, from the Gauteng province, saying that the quest to protect minority interests, their culture, their language, etc., shouldn't sugarcoat or hide other dubious intentions, such as prejudices. Let's speak now about the role of AfriForum in South African society. You make no secret that you're looking out for the interests of Afrikaners. Are you excluding the majority of South Africans in your quest to look after their interests? And in doing so, are you racist?
Not at all. Not at all. And I must differ from what the MEC had to say. I think we are looking for the problem at the wrong place. There are many, many anomalies in our country today. We say, and government officials say, that we are striving towards non-racialism, but we are doing that by applying racially based empowerment provisions. We say that we are creating a united society, but we do that by dividing the society, by imposing quotas in the workplace, by imposing quotas in business, by imposing quotas in every single sphere of life, even in sport. That is not the way to unite a nation.
How then would you advise that we redress?
The way to unite a nation is to make people feel safe, to create safe places for every person wherever they are, whether it is a Tsonga-speaking person in Manamanele or whether it's an Afrikaans-speaking person in Pretoria. People need to feel safe. They need to be able to be sure that I can do my job, I can be certain that this country has a future for me. I can interact with every person in a way that I'm not threatened, but I am still safe. And that's the way we need to address racism, not in the way that MEC Lesufi is trying to do it by imposing BEE, by imposing racially based quotas.
Do you feel that minority groups are under siege in South Africa?
I think so, yes. And I think so because when the Constitution was agreed upon 20 years ago, the Constitution said, well, we've got this tension in the Constitution-making process. We've got this tension of ideas between unity on the one hand, unity at all costs on the one hand, and what we had under the previous dispensation of diversity at all costs. The Constitution was a compromise of these two things. We said when the Constitution was drafted, the compromise would be unity and diversity. Unity that's being protected. We are all South Africans. We are all working to go towards the success of South Africa. But we do not need to feel unsafe in this country. And that's why the principle of diversity was also entrenched in our Constitution. And it's not only a local thing, it's an international thing. The international tendency at this very moment is that we protect minorities. We need to protect minorities. We need to make sure, and governments need to go out of their way to make sure that this little Tsonga-speaking community in Manamanele feel safe, that they are not being threatened, and that their actions are being treated in a way that is good.
Lerato, let me bring you into the equation now. Perhaps the problem began 20 years ago. There is one school of thought that suggests that because our transition sort of blanketed everything, and we were also hopeful, and we had this Rainbow Nation ideal, that because there was no clear winner in this, there's not enough blood, there wasn't a coup, etc., that white people were not, quote, put in their place, as it were. And that because of that, they are now still feeling entitled. There's no need for black economic empowerment. Everybody just says, forget about it, move on. There was no healing. Not enough was done 20 years ago. What do you think?
We at the Institute, firstly, I'd just like to say, have a problem with the implementation of things such as BEE and affirmative action. And it's not the intention of these policies, but it's how they are brought about. So they don't benefit the people they're meant to benefit. That being said, I do think the idea of a non-racial society at this stage in our democracy, which is quite soon, is a bit premature. So we went through decades of living in a racist society and segregating people based on race. And now, 20 years into the new democratic dispensation, we want to forget that happened and start from fresh. And the truth is we can't, because as a result of all those years of racial segregation and economic favoring of white people, we can't now say to black people, you are all on the same starting line and you can go forward in that regard and everything will be okay. So as it stands, white people make up 15% of the population, but of those earning in the highest income bracket of 700,000 Rand or more, 80% of that income bracket is white people. The opposite is true of black South Africans, and I'm not excluding Indian, Asian or colored people, I'm just trying to illustrate a point. Black South Africans make up 80% of the population, but in that highest income bracket, only 15% of them fall in that bracket. So with things like that happening, we can't pretend to be a non-racial society, really, because the thing that I mentioned earlier, economic inequality in the country is so vast. I mean, you just have to compare Alexandra and Sandton City, and you can't then expect those people to integrate at a social level because they're worlds apart. So again, I'd like to stress the point that it is playing itself out in terms of tensions and race relations, but it's an economic problem. And if we fix that, I don't think we can come up with a racial policy to say that everyone must hold hands and we must be racially integrated and be happy with the country. I think the problem is fixing the structural challenges that South Africa has, such as unemployment, education, economic inequality, and then we'll start moving towards racial integration.
We're, again, seeing it in the schools. How is it that our young children are also now getting involved in this? They were not there during the times of apartheid. Ideally, they should not have those scars with them, and yet we're seeing such incidents being purported. Is it because they're learning it from their parents? Are they learning it from their teachers? I know you've been holding back one or two times. You almost jumped into the fray there. You're very disciplined. But speak to us a little bit about that.
Well, let me rectify something that Vili said. You know, Vili's clear is an apartheid denied list. You want us to accept that there was no apartheid. It was a policy introduced in 1948 that my parents could not go to school, to a certain school, that were denied even to swim in a beachfront, that were denied access to resources that would have made us to be better than any other person. That if I have to study mathematics, I need to get permission from a Minister of Education. That we had almost 19 different education departments, poorly resourced, only one education department that was highly resourced. And we come and say, it's unfair for us to redress and ensure that everyone is equal. We've never said there is a certain race that needs to be denied access to certain resources. We have never said there is a certain race that is not safe in this country. We have never said there is a certain race that does not have right to exist or to identify itself. And for someone, therefore, to hide behind a broomstick and say, we need to ensure that we don't have segregation of a special type, or we don't need to empower other people. It's so unfortunate, highly unfortunate. And that's where the pain is, that the victims of apartheid are the ones that should embrace non-racialism alone. Other people who benefited, apartheid beneficiaries, we need to drag them to non-racialism because they don't want to share their benefits. If you say apartheid was wrong, all the benefits accrued through apartheid must be shared by all South Africans. And that's what Lerato is saying, economically and otherwise. So you can't come and say, where we are, we believe to give an opportunity for a young cricket boy to play cricket. That means that that particular person should not be incorporated. Our ability to build non-racialism is not going to be undermined. Our ability to ensure this country's pure non-racialism is not going to be influenced by other people that believe that there was nothing wrong in this country. And it's unfortunate that no one wants to claim that they voted apartheid in this country. When the Nationalist Party was brought to power every election, where are those people that voted for that apartheid?
Let me bring Mr. Spies into the equation now. Are you sympathizers of the likes of Orania with their own currency and making no secret of the fact that they want a separate state from South Africa in their quest to protect the minority group? I'm going to ask you to answer that question as briefly as possible and also respond to Mr. Lesufi.
What we say is that our Constitution provides for diversity. Our Constitution allows for people to associate. Our Constitution allowed President Mandela to interact, to be part of to lead the country, but to retreat to Kunu whenever he wanted to retreat to Kunu. Kunu is a cultural safe place for Mr. Mandela, as Orania is a cultural safe place for some other people. We need to accept that as a given. That is not discrimination in itself. That is people finding safe places for each other. Mr. Mandela needed his safe place. Every one of us needs that little safe place that we can retreat to. That doesn't say that we need to fight each other. That doesn't say that we need to disrespect each other. It doesn't say that we need to take away the dignity of any person. That we need to fight. But the way, if you have a stomach ache and you are taking treatment for a headache, your stomach ache will just worsen, because you are treating a certain disease with the wrong medicine. What government is doing today is we have a huge stomach ache in South Africa, but government is flooding us with headache medication, and our stomach ache is not improving at all.
We'll have to leave it with that metaphor, at least for now. Do stay with us and we discuss possible solutions going forward. Will these wounds ever heal? All right, a quick ad break. Morning Live continues after this.